welcome back. This week we're going to do a two-part video that we're going to build a table. And at the end of part 2 you'll see what the table was for. But in this little project there's a lot going on in it. There's going to be some loose tenon joinery. We're going to use some biscuit joinery. We're going to be doing some plunge routing on the router table with some stop blocks to control the width of some mortises that we're going to cut. We're going to be cutting some tapered legs with a tapering jig on the table saw. A lot happening in this project. It's going to be a two-parter because the overall thing was 30 minutes. That way you can watch them at your leisure. So with that, let's get started with part 1 right now.
To start with, we're going to be milling the legs and the aprons for the table. Here we've got our fence set up at 1 3/4 to mill this 8/4 mahogany stock to 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 square. It'll eventually be tapered down to 1 1/4 inches down at the foot, but we're beginning with 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 square stock. Now we're resetting the fence to mill the aprons, and the aprons will be 2 1/2 inches wide. Now this is 4/4 mahogany stock, and we're starting with 2 1/2 inches wide for the aprons. In this step, we're trimming the legs to the 28 inches that we want in the finished product. I've got a stop block set up to my right there, and just using my table saw sled to cut it to the proper length of 28 inches. And now we're going to trim the aprons to 19 inches. Again, there's a stop block to my right. Make a squaring cut on the first end and then just slide it over against the stop block to cut it to length. That way I know both ends are square when we get ready to glue it up.
There's our 4 aprons and our 4 legs. To hold the aprons onto the legs, I'm going to use what they call loose tenon joinery. And it's kind of like mortise and tenon, except the tenon off the aprons is not going to be an integral part of it. It's going to be a separate. It's you can buy this tenon in stock. You mill a mortise, a 3/8 inch mortise, into your apron and into your leg in the matching position, and then you just glue in this tenon stock into both your apron and then into the mortise that you milled on your leg. So hence loose tenon, because now it's loose. So I've got the router table set up to mill our mortise into our aprons. So we're going to do that now.
You can see here we have stop blocks set up to the right and to the left of the bit. That controls the width of the mortise, and it's just a matter of dropping the apron straight down on the bit and moving it from one stop block to the next. It is very important that it drops straight down. That's why I used tall stop blocks. And I continue to raise the bit. I think it was a total of 3 times to get this. It's about a 1 inch long deep mortise.
That completes the mortise for the aprons. Now I have to set up and cut the corresponding mortise for the legs.
To cut this mortise on the legs, again we're plunging it down on the bit. And you can't see it in this view, but there's a line drawn on my fence that I use as a reference to start the plunge. And then I plunge it down on that line and then just move it to the stop block. raising the bit to get the right depth. And in a moment, there'll be a view where you can see that line on the fence.
As you can see, this side was against the fence, so when I plunged it down, it got this location. But to get this location, see, it's going to be farther away from the fence, so I've got to reset the fence to cut these 4 legs in this location. But the process will be the same, it's just a different fence location. I'm going to give you a real good close-up of how I plunge this down on the bit and then move it over to the stop block. Got this tapering jig set up, and you have to set it up to where when it's set in here, it enters the saw blade at the point that you want. So now it's entering the saw blade at 7 inches. And then I've got the angle set to where as it pushes through, when it comes out, it'll come out at 1 1/4, thereby cutting our taper on that. So I have to cut it on 2 sides, and I've got it marked with an X. The taper is actually on the same side that the mortise is, so that's one way to figure it out. See, here's our mortise, and I've got it marked this side up, and this side goes against the blade, and then I just turn it 90 degrees. This side is up, and this side goes against the blade. Well, the battery died on my camera, so while I was recharging it, I did all the sanding on the legs after we cut the taper on the legs, sanded those down. And now we finished the aprons with the mortise on the aprons, but I think I'm gonna put a little bead detail on the aprons. As you can see here, it's a little bead detail here and a bead detail on the bottom. It'll ride on all 4 aprons. I have the router table set up with a beading bit. We'll put that bead detail on both the top and the bottom of the aprons. there we can see. Give you a little idea of the profile of that beading bit. You can see the beads here and here. I have marked the top and cut it with biscuits. I'm going to glue these 3 panels for the top with biscuits. I'm going to put 3 here. You can see I marked both sides. If you're not familiar with biscuit joinery, you can see my video about creating a round wall clock. I'll put a link in the description, and the link here on the screen. You can always go to that, where I show how to use a biscuit joiner and cut biscuit joints pretty thoroughly. But I've cut these already, and I made sure to stay in 4 inches from the edge because I'm going to be trimming this to 24, so I'm well away from the biscuits. So now we're just going to glue it up. Little Rockler glue brush is really pretty nice. You can spread the glue around however you want, and they clean up real easy. And I've got what amounts to a wavy edge bit installed in my little palm router, and I'm going to route a wavy edge around, and I'm going to start on the end grain. That way if it chips out, I'll clean it up when I come back with the grain. Now some touch-up sanding, get that little burn mark off. Rockler sent me one of these universal small port hose kits, and it's got some small hose and several adapters, and it allows me to hook up my DeWalt sander to the port, and then on the other end I can put that to my shop vac, so to cut down on my dust on my sander. Pretty nice little deal. It's a Rockler small port hose kit. You should check it out. Well, we hope you enjoyed part one, and we did a lot in it with the plunge routing, with the tapering of the legs, and just a lot of information there. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, we ask you to like the video, leave us a comment, and subscribe to our channel if you're a new viewer for us. We appreciate that very much. LLS. Like, leave us a comment, and subscribe. My social media information is down in the description below, along with all my contact info, and we'd love to hear from you. Now, in part two, we're going to put all this together. Going to do the assembly, tell you a little bit about the finish, and we hope you stay tuned for that. And so until next time, be safe.